If you haven't already rated and reviewed the Single Tracks podcast in your podcast app, now's the time to do it. We're randomly selecting listener reviews to read on the show, and if we choose yours, you'll get a free Single Tracks hat in the mail. Hit pause right now, write a quick review, and then listen to future episodes to find out if you won yourself a hat. Happy trails. Hey everybody, welcome to the Single Tracks podcast. My name is Jeff, and today my guests are Scott Needham and Vincent Salabye. So Scott is a longtime bike racer who has been inspired to start a NICA program for youth in Gallup, New Mexico. The city borders the Navajo reservation, and Needham hopes to create numerous opportunities for Native kids both in Gallup and on the reservation through cycling programs. Vincent is a father of two who lives on the reservation. He's the Diné comp team head coach and board president of the Silver Stallion Bicycle and Coffee Works. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, so Vincent, what first drew you into cycling?
Well, as a kid, when I was younger, I used to ride bikes like all the time and up until they break. And then from there, it's like, okay, what do I do with it? But other than that, I think there was a delayed time until I met the bicycle once more. And let's just say this, the bike industry has changed since then. And when I came across, I guess, some YouTube videos, and I got inspired through that. And then I was like, okay, working in the health field, decided to implement bike programs. And the first thing I had to do was research bicycles and get some bicycles purchased. And of course, what do you do when you have bikes sitting there? You jump on it and ride it. And that's what I started doing. And that's the beginning of this whole story. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome. What about you, Scott? How did you first get into cycling?
I don't come from like a cycling family, but, me and my two older brothers, we had BMX bikes as kids. And then, went off, played team sports through high school and stuff. And then after college, got really into trekking through the mountains in Colorado, and then somewhere along the lines discovered the road bike through a friend down here in New Mexico, and realized, wow, this is just the most efficient machine on the planet, and you can go for hours, and kind of used it as sort of a cross training for my my bigger mission, which was to get further into the mountains and stuff. And then in that process, and I think that's kind of speaks to the heart of this project, is that just by accident fell in love with it, just by the accidental incredible effects it had, or help assistance it provided in a number of spectrum of life. So yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like it means a lot to you personally. Why did you feel though that you wanted to share this with other people? I mean, what makes you think that they could do the same thing for others? I guess the simple answer is proof is in the pudding, and it's just not my story. That's the greatest thing about making the argument for the bike, is that you got a million other examples to point at as far as what kind of positive impact it brings to people. And why the bike? I guess it's a long story, and how long we got? It's like there's a few iterations of the Silver Stallion Bicycle and Coffee Works nonprofit that we're now operating. Before that, it was Silver Stallion Coffee and Bread, and before that, it was the Silver Stallion Saloon, which is a bar that got closed down in 2006 here in Gallup for abetting alcoholism. And basically, it was a financial exploit on severe alcoholism, which is kind of common around here. So there's these kind of dramatic topics involved in all this, which is fighting addiction, and the Silver Stallion represents a lot of that to this community, to this region. It was known for, it was a popular place, and it got closed down. And then in the process of having moved here after having raced my bike with BMC racing team for a few years, and then working with them for, I guess all in all over a decade of time, came here with my wife and kids, and And well, I guess, largely, beautiful landscape, incredible terrain, but just the absence of the industry. So, first go was the coffee and bread entrepreneurial effort. And then that closed down, and my novice attempt at being a businessman, which was, as much success as it was failure, but definitely equal part, realizing that, like, in order to keep this dream alive of this project for, basically a community, a social enterprise of sorts through sales and service, just to have a cool place to be excited to go to here in Gallup, that I realized, well, shoot, if I'm going to be in business, that's like getting married again. And what am I committed to the rest of my life, So I know I'm committed to the bike. And I kind of went through a bit of a rocky period with the bike, as far as it being like as much, like almost literally 100% of my life. And then kind of like sliding off the table, and then kind of trying to find an appropriate place for it in the landscape. And I guess bottom line is like, okay, I want the bike to be part of my life. I want the bike to be, part of my kid's life. And, wow, look around me. There's no access to the bicycle, in our, there's flash in the pan type efforts, but what is there substantially to kind of like offer what was, given to me. And I give, major props to Vincent and a handful of people like him who have like, made it work, figured out, overcome a lot of the, obstacles to get there. So I guess, that's, I'm sort of, I'm a recovering bicycle addict of sorts, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Vincent, you live on the reservation. So tell us about some of the challenges that are facing youth on the reservation and also in the surrounding area of Gallup. Any challenge, right? It sounds like addiction and alcoholism it was a challenge in Gallup. And
here's a good segue into this. Right now, Navajo Nation is like, I guess, per capita, the highest rate of COVID virus positive cases. So wow. With that, gives you an idea that access to resources, access to health services or hospitals, mm-hmm. and then most importantly, the most important, I guess you could say, thing that would help the people is washing their hands and access to water. So it gives you an idea that not only were these challenges when I was young or even earlier times, they're challenges that exist today. Yeah, now, wow. In comparison to that, if you bring up the other challenges in relation to drug addiction, alcoholism, domestic violence, or even at this time, we're still dealing with kidnapping and women being taken off the reservation and go missing. So in a sense, we have all the challenges that any other community has, but you I guess you could say you have to heighten it or raise it a little bit, mm-hmm. raise that a little bit, and then you get an idea of what the challenges are here. Now, with that, like, how do you deal with these things? We have so many ways that we're trying to create an environment or a place, and then also a vehicle for a coping strategy. And mm-hmm. with my life, living here on the reservation all my life, I found when I think back to my younger years and what kept me, I guess you could say, kept me motivated, kept me focused, and gave me a sense of, I guess you could say, a different perspective about how to be very vigilant in living on the reservation was the mm-hmm. bicycle. It was the bike. And then when I go back to that, to this day, I still kind of look at my bicycle and think like, man, this thing right here is a great tool to combat in a lot of the things that are going on right now. And it's a perspective that I think people can take appreciation to if they, throw their leg over a bike and give it a try. So in a sense, again, back to the challenges out here, they exist. And not only did I experience these once or twice in my life at different stages, I think back and look back to my experience and understand that those same challenges, those same life cycles, those same stages in life are happening at this time with kids out there, with younger adults and adults too, and parents. So my thought is the bicycle at any time can intervene and be a really helpful tool to any to that, I should say. So kind of that's my thought on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is it tough to sort of convince people that, hey, the bike can do all of this stuff? You know, that you know, hey, you're facing all these problems. It's like, here, have a bike. I mean, is that something that people are receptive to, or do they kind of push back and say like, no, I don't have time to do that, or like that, you know, that's a waste of money to buy a bike. You know, I've got all these other things I'm trying to deal with.
Yeah, I can see it that way. You're right. I think like the challenge to that is like, I guess directly people see either they are going to invest their time because resources, like I was saying, are so limited out here.
Yeah.
To make a decision like that, like Scott was saying, making an additional marriage and having something there to be in your life consistently is a big decision out here because it's like there's so many other things that need your attention, your time, your money, your energy to get things going throughout your day. So in order for you to bring on another responsibility of a mobile a mobile machine that would need maintenance, that will get practically a flat tire every day because of the bullheads that are out here. Yeah, right. And then also, if I need a part, I need to have internet. I need to pay for internet. I have to pay for a computer or a phone and buy me all these new things just to get access to order online. Or either that, I got to make sure that I put that in my list of things to do when I do my once or twice a month travel to a border town, and make sure that my money is budgeted to receive all of those things. So in a sense, not just for me, but also my family, times that by 3 or 4, it is a big decision. So my thought is what myself and Scott have been trying to conjure up is, how do we create access to the bike and the bike industry, to the reservation, to kids, to families, to parents, to schools, that we kind of alleviate that challenge. And then from that, what comes of it? Once we get that, get the people motivated and gain new perspective, hopefully there's some sort of, I guess you say, a sense of initiative, and we inspire them to like take on that challenge, find a way, and then be a part of this movement so that they create access themselves, they create the knowledge, and they create this intellectual knowledge, like Scott will talk on a little bit. It's just like understanding how you can overcome these challenges to be a part of, I guess you could say, to make the bike a part of your life. And when that happens, it, in a sense, what I kind of see visually, or, you know, what I've experienced is it kind of like, it intervenes and it takes place of all of the other negative things in your life, because you're going to have to make that like a prominent thing in your lifestyle. It's a big lifestyle change. And that's one thing that's hard to do out here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really like how you sort of set this up, Scott, you know, with the Silver Stallion and how it was a bar, and, you know, there was problems with addiction, and in a way you're sort of, then you spoke to sort of your addiction to cycling. You know, it's kind of trading one for another, but in this case, it's something that's really positive, right? Something really positive to put your mind toward and your body toward, and to really like embrace it. And it's going to have these effects on the rest of your life, right? I mean, is that something, Scott, that you were seeing people in the community needed, or were you able to see like how other kids, like perhaps your own kids, have responded to sort of having cycling be part of their lives?
Yeah, Jeff, I think there's probably a dozen different avenues to answer that question. Yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of like all of the above. What you see in Gallup is shoot. Okay, I'm gonna stop and do one of those timeouts, and we'll start again. You just got me thinking. Yeah, Jeff, with this whole project with the Silver Stallion, Vincent and I make the joke that, you know, we're gonna make some T-shirts about, you know, what was the Silver Stallion Saloon, but now it's become a bike shop, coffee shop, and make a T-shirt that says Silver Stallion, creating addicts since 2018, you know, and a play off that, because another thing a friend told me one time, he's a really cool artist out in Seattle. He just said, he's like, you know, Scott, if you don't have a vice, you're just kind of boring. And I've always appreciated that. Like, we need something, you know, I guess that's the thing, is like, who needs the bike? Who needs more exercise, more time to think, you know, wind in their hair and blood flow? We all do, you know? And I think, I think that's the powerful, I don't know, it's like a denominator of sorts, of a common denominator that the bike brings each of us to, that we're all cry for help. We all need, you know, a sense of improvement. So I guess I just kind of want to throw everyone in the same boat on that. And I guess why the bike, you know, and that's for all those good reasons, along with, I mean, Vincent and I think our relationship is an example of that, and so many others, that, like, through the bike, and I think the connection, like, here we are speaking with you today, Jeff. You know why? Well, because of the bike, right? And I think that the connection that can be made through the bike, or the commonality that we find, transcends our differences. And in that sense, I don't really know of another example of something like that. You know, I mean, runners, they love to run, but, you know, it's kind of, it's way simple, right? I mean, cyclists, you got these like cool gadgets to play with and things to look at, and, you know, and it's way more efficient, you know, so it like gets you further. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that I think, I say unapologetically that I have a bias for the bike, and that's for a very personal reason, right? But the more been sitting on this, I'm basically been sitting in a think tank about this project for the last working on 3 years now, I guess. I mean, we've been trying to get things going for well over that as far as programming, but now with this nonprofit, the bike has kind of continued to reveal and produce itself as something that is perfect for I guess our context, in the sense that, you know, kind of what you're asking Vincent earlier, like, what are the obstacles? Well, the obstacles are, first, let's just talk geographic obstacles, you know, like Vincent mentioned, like, for people to get to a bike shop, oftentimes it takes a 2 to 3 hour drive to get there, which is, you know, well over a half gas tank. And then, you know, I'll just cut to the chase. I mean, there's all this sort of like, you know, industry obstacles, but there's also an unspoken thing about, I always say about in this region, like, if, you know, and what made me think of it when you kind of said something earlier, Jeff, is that, like, you know, asking, like, how do you convince people of the bike? You know, what, like, do they even know what they're looking at when they see a bike, when you hand them a bike? You know, like, do they know what Vincent's talking about, what I'm talking about, what all these people with this, like, sort of inside experience are talking about? And the opposite direction of that is you or I, Jeff, you know, being non-native, and coming to the reservation and trying to understand what exactly even are we looking at? You know, what does it mean to grow up on the res? What does it mean to be you know, part of Navajo Nation, sovereign nation, but also part of the U.S. You know, and I feel like you know, my wife and I have been, here with our family for 8 years. And, just not until recently do I even, I guess, understand or really see the barriers that exist between life on the res and off. And so, kind of in an attempt to not bring in some sort of missionary effort of like this Western bias and perspective.
Scott, I think what you're trying to allude to is the bike, like you were saying, it transcends differences. So with that, the bike is kind of like, in a way, connecting the two and allowing a conversation to happen. And that conversation can span to community efforts. It can span to individual challenges. In a sense, it brings it brings harmony to those that are a part of it, and excitement and joy. And then from that, a new community is built, or a new community is formulated. And it's really great because all this positive energy is directed towards where all these participants come from. And like Scott was alluding to earlier, it's like it creates this movement. And I think that's a really good conversation that Scott and I have a lot of times, is that getting Silver Stallion in a fashion, or programming it in a fashion to where we can show up and have bicycles ready. We have a program ready. We have locations that are identified. We have communities that are a part of this effort and are, and can continue the programs, or continue the biking programs, and then getting schools involved to where they have vocational classes to educate in bicycle mechanics. And then from there, we have this great terrain out here, this landscape that the Navajo people already have this connection to. And then from that, they create this, I guess you could say, this expression for themselves on a bicycle. In a sense, the bicycle becomes a paintbrush for them, so they can express in their own way, in their own fashion, where they come from, on terrain that they've been familiar with all their life, and then create new perspective for themselves. And then from that, hopefully generate, in a sense, a new livelihood per se. So that's kind of like how Scott and I kind of have an understanding that this bike transcends our differences. It transcends lifestyles. And then from that, it just cuts down to the bottom line of saying a creative experience, and it just heightens your experience wherever you are growing up. I mean, like, it's just great that how the bicycle can do that for an individual. And then from that, a community.
Yeah. Vincent, are you seeing that on your team, on the Diné comp team? I mean, I imagine there are all kinds of kids on the team, and what are you seeing in terms of like how they're interacting? Like, are these kids that normally would know each other outside of the team, or would they like hang out if the team didn't exist?
Right. That's a great point. No. Yeah. None of these kids would have probably met each other. I would say there's probably 2 or 3 kids that know each other within the same school because they're probably like in the same grade. But other than that, all the other kids had different living locations, different communities that they represent, different age groups. And that's what's really good about this. That diversity actually develops, in a sense, a family, because the older kids become older brothers, and then the younger kids become younger brothers, vice versa, sisters. And it's really good to see this because it allows them to create a good relationship with not only them, but the coaches and then the team. They become part of this effort, and they understand it very quickly that they are, I guess you could say, representing their community. And then from when they're together as a team, they represent the nation. And it gives them a little bit of it gives them motivation to actually I guess you say speak their mind speak what they understand, what they're doing, and then they come out of it at the very end, and they have gratuity. They're thankful for that experience. And then the parents too, they come back and they let us know that, what they've been a part of is a big thing in their life. And that's something that we always kind of take in and understand, that we know that it's a great opportunity to intervene at a great time for these kids, and for them to gain perspective of what's going on around them, and then also take that back so they can renew what they can do for themselves.
Yeah. You mentioned the parents too. I was going to ask, do the parents sort of get involved as well? I mean, are they like attending the races and getting to know other parents and things, or are you even seeing parents who are like, that kind of looks like fun, I might try that myself?
Right. Yes. The parents show up to the races. It's really good.
And, everyone asks about the bike, but, it's like there's also the peripheral aspect of the community, of the sense of being part of something. I think that has, I guess, kind of the in a sense, the largest gross impact. As I said earlier, going between different versions of the Silver Stallion. I've been working over the years with a group from Rwanda cycling, and I saw what they've done in their past with getting bicycling started in post-genocide Rwanda. And I think that that certainly had a profound impact. That was right after I was done racing. I was kind of like sitting out a contract, or sitting out the last year of my contract because of head injury. So it was kind of like this, solstice as far as like where the bike's supposed to be in life. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But I saw the people were on bikes. There's probably more bikes in Rwanda than just about anywhere aside from Amsterdam or India, maybe. I don't know. But, they're using them for transport. They're using them for livelihood, like daily tasks. But then the ability that not only the bike gave each individual through the programming in Africa, but also the impact it had on the surrounding community, who would see this like little small peloton of riders flow through their town. The kids who would, jump up and run to the side of the road and cheer them on. I mean, anyway, after, as we started approaching this project, we came across this grant by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, or is that right? And it was about addressing social isolation within the U.S. using an international model. So that's when I contacted Team Rwanda, which is now Team Africa Rising, and just said, "Hey, what you guys done with the bike? What if we tried to do this across the reservation? How would that look? How could we do that in a sense to address this issue of social isolation?" And that term social isolation really wasn't in my vocabulary, before, and kind of like, well, what exactly is that? And then in that kind of like, I guess, investigation of like, what is the living circumstance on the reservation? I think we started pulling back, the curtain on a lot of these very concerning aspects to reservation life. One of which is isolation. These kids. And when Vincent's talking about these teammates, I mean, they're separated by hours. I mean, the Navajo Nation is as big as the state of West Virginia. It's bigger than 10 of the U.S. states. It's as big as all New England states put together. And there's like 12 like semi-legitimate grocery stores, and there's not one single bike shop. And just some of these things are just sort of alarming. Over 30% of people don't have running water, and anyway. And then, so basically the bike, what I think it awards these young lives living in beautiful landscape, but in this isolation. Sometimes miles away from people, or down a dirt, clay, muddy road that if it rains or snows, you might be trapped, off access to any pavement for days at a time. I mean, a lot of families wait, or they only travel away from home in the winter, either like early morning, because that's when the ground is frozen and they can actually get out. So anyway, the difference between being, you put a bike between a kid's legs out in that sort of landscape, and isolation turns into sort of a positive solitude, and then being part of the bike industry kind of taps you into being part of like this nationwide industry, being this international industry, and being part of something and having places to go, events or rides or locations to dream about. I think this whole thing, like I was kind of talking about, looking into this issue of social isolation, and then looking at all these different sorts of, concerning aspects of reservation life, that I think, I keep saying to people like, hey, actually, if you want to learn American history 101, I think the first thing each one of us should have done instead of going to college is go live on the reservation for a year or two. And, I keep saying, like, in Gallup, it's like the receipt for this country is still on the table, and on the reservation, obviously. And bottom line is the reservation system's failing. And it almost feels like there's some mastermind in some sort of mechanism over in Washington, D.C. that like wants it to, so that, people throw up their hands and be like, yeah, okay, we'll just like assimilate and be part of this like Western United States culture. And, and the ironic thing is oftentimes, even though Gallup is a border town, Flagstaff, Arizona is on the other kitty corner on the southwest. And then there's Page, Arizona way up in the northwest. And then Farmington, which is like in New Mexico, the northeast. And there's actually it's like more of it's a kind of off topic, but there's more hospitality in big urban settings for, I think, communities coming off the reservation than there is, say, in border towns. And I think that's because there's, like I said, there's a receipt on the table and everyone's looking at it and no one wants to pick it up and pay, And so that means there's this sort of avoiding the topics. There's avoiding, coming to terms so that being said, right, these kids coming off the res, they have an incredible amount to navigate within that dysfunctional group of adults they're watching interact, amongst on and off the res. And someone when we first moved here said, a kid could make a jump from the res to Gallup to San Francisco, but a kid's not really going to make a jump from the res to San Francisco. So That's where I feel like Gallup holds a very pivotal, important place in this whole process. And Gallup, it's on I-40, halfway between Albuquerque and Flagstaff. Everybody knows of it. People coming from Durango heading to Phoenix. It's your sort of mandatory stop in Gallup because you got to fill up a gas tank because there's not going to be another one for another 2.5 hours. But Gallup would just be a sleepy highway exit with a gas station, maybe, if it wasn't for the res. So it's more the reservation than it's anything else. It's a lot of different things, but it is the res.
So before you started, you said off the record. So do you not want to include?
What I'm trying to say is there's like it's Vincent, That's why it was very important for me to have him on this call, because he can help you and I, people like coming off the res, have insight as to what it's really like for a young life to navigate off the res. And that's something that, you and I with our viewfinders, we just don't see, we don't quite even understand what to look like. And I think this opens up into the broader discussion with working with Outride, working with programming like NICA, that like, I think even the viewfinders for the industry, they don't even understand the obstacles that exist for people like Vincent or young kids on the res. Like, you start up a team, here's a PDF, it's like, oh, okay, well, right. we don't have a bike shop. We don't have the intellectual capital. We don't have the social capital. We don't have the material capital. So, I think, a great opportunity right now, especially in this, time with George Floyd and these protests and this dialogue that everybody's now more perhaps than ever available to, is that, companies and programs within the industry need to come to the table with, everything about diversity, equity, and inclusivity in a practical, pragmatic way, and as we were kind of, your questions with Vincent, like, how does this happen on a grassroots level? Yes, it's totally a grassroots effort, but this also needs the heavy lifting of the industry to help it. And this can't be a climb the whole time for people on the res. There needs to be some things that roll downhill. And as a privileged white American myself, pretty much my whole life, things rolled downhill at me,
Yeah. Well, we should mention Vincent's call dropped off because it doesn't have a good internet connection where he is, and I'm sure sounds like that's part of daily life there. Just another one of the challenges. I think it's I'd like to go back to sort of how we started this conversation. A lot of people who maybe aren't familiar with sort of, for lack of a better term, marginalized groups like Native Americans, like a lot of different communities in America. They might see these outreach efforts, through the Outride Foundation, which is funded mostly through Specialized, the bike company. A lot of people may see this as just like, oh, they're just trying to like expand their customer base. Like this is just why do we need more bikers? Is that just to like make more money and, just be a bigger company? But I think we touched on this at the beginning. I mean, bikes and cycling really have this power to like help people and to empower people and to, really add something to their lives. That's not just about like, oh, sweet. The number of people mountain biking went up 3% last year. Like, let's pat ourselves on the back. Like, I'm starting to realize after talking to people like you and Vincent and others that there really is something magical about the bikes. And a lot of these efforts are not about making money. It's not about like Specialized trying to get a foothold into the reservation because they want to, open a bike shop and sell hundreds of bikes. Like, I'm sure to them, they're like, we're never going to make money on this. Like, this is something we're doing because we believe in bikes and we believe in the power to help people and to better their lives. I mean, is that kind of your perspective as well?
Yeah, I think that, the challenge in all of it is that it's put within this, capitalist market of business, and the numbers always gotta, add up or you need to stay in the black on things. But I don't doubt Mike Sinyard's interest and effort in this project. I think that, what he's overcoming in a lot of ways is, or at the start was, the lack of sophisticated dialogue as to what really is this experience we're having on the bike and what does it really mean to us. And I think it goes hand in hand with something I personally feel and believe and kind of convicted by, is that like, to much of a degree, the industry leaves us shorthanded with it leaves us shorthanded as far as like, again, that sophisticated or like, broad perspective as to like what's important about this. The industry, like after finished racing and working within performance at BMC, I started coaching with the BMC development team, and this was kind of like a group of kids that were sort of like handpicked, to be part of this farm team for BMC, and riders like Sylvain Dillier and Stefan Kung and Pavel Sivakov, these riders who are on the top level of the Pro Tour right now. And it's funny, like working with those kids, like kids I call them, they're young adults, young men. It was like if they didn't get a job with Quick Step, Team Sky, or BMC, they considered themselves a failure, and their tenure with the team was a disappointment. And it was just kind of like, how the heck is this possible that you're traveling the world, you're riding your bike for hours on end every day, you're meeting all these different people. How is this like, how is this a disappointment, or how is this letdown? And so I started asking those riders at the beginning of the year. One camp said, okay, everyone go sit by yourself for a sec and write down 3 reasons why you getting on the bike every day is worth it to you, despite your results at the races. Like, exclusive of that, why is this worth it to you? So, that way, if there's, and I always say, in road racing especially, I mean, it's like 87% disappointment. If you don't win, you lose, but within that experience, there's an array of accomplishment, but there's not a platform for those things. There's not, a real statement to be made that's going to be really acknowledged or praised, and it's like your private results, like that happen along the way all the time. I mean, you might not have finished the race on the podium, but you had like 3 flat tires, you chased on twice, and you whatever the case is, your brake was rubbing and you still finished 6th or something. I mean, that some of those are extraordinary. And anyhow, like, I think that what Outride is doing is simply downright the appropriate thing to do. It's like, if there are these systemic injustices in our society, in a sense, there needs to be a systemic approach towards, erasing, equalizing, or, abolishing some of those. And that's what it seems to me, these heavy lifts, like by Outride, by getting bikes at schools, between kids' legs, getting a common speaking language, getting a common experience, learning skills and safety, so that, everyone has the same understanding of what the bike means and what to do, what not to do. And then from there, programs like NICA can take off and go somewhere. Yeah.
Well, one final thing I want to ask you about is trail access within the context of what you're doing and within your local area. Is trail access an issue for people on the reservation? Like, are there mountain bike trails already? And if not, are there efforts to have those built and make it easier for people to get to them?
There has been, an ongoing effort to get trail development going across the reservation. Are there trails? There's few. There's this organization, Navajo Yes, Youth Empowerment Services for Diné, Navajo land, that has put together a Trails Task Force group, and has been working with IMBA and different groups, trail advocacy groups like that, with Arizona Trails. But the thing is that there are a lot of like natural trails. There's a lot of ancient sheep paths, and there's these little wagon roads that go up the mountainside or up the side of a mesa. And you'll see that like with Vincent and his crew. I mean, a lot of Vincent's thing is like, hey, the bike, it's a horse. It's my horse. It takes me places, and there's kind of like this it's sort of like, more, not quite like enduro downhill, but more like, slash between BMX trials and enduro and downhill. I mean, kind of like, seeing a line and working your way through it and learn, the technique and ability to get through, and also just embrace and see and go on the landscape. It's not about, racing down, everyone's timing themselves. But there has been trail efforts, but, the one thing is that there's not any programming. There's not any events. There's not any events, but like, it's minus the industry, there's not a shop down the road near the trailhead. So, there's some effort for that. And, I think it's a heavy lifting that that the industry needs to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there certainly are a lot of pieces involved, and yeah, I mean, I think that's also, it sounds like part of the opportunity, based on what Vincent was saying has been his experience in terms of, the bike. It really gives riders a lot to focus on. I mean, there's the physical aspect, there's the mental aspects of it. There's learning to repair a bike. There's confidence. I mean, it's like you get all of that, and there are so many pieces, and we all need help in all of those areas too. I mean, you can't race by yourself, and you can't, learn how to work on a bike by yourself, very easily. And so, yeah, I think that's an interesting point, is that you need all those pieces in the community to sort of make it happen and to make it a success.
Yeah. And I think we need to do a better job of recognizing all those that exists for many of us, and the absence of those for others. And I think that's well put. Not only do we need each other to do this, but there's also the aspect that nobody can pedal your bike for you. You got to do it yourself. And it's certainly easier to do alongside someone else who's doing the same thing, and like you said about the whole aspect of I mean, it's default meditation. You get focused, you get skilled, and you always end up a little bit of a better human after a ride. We can all kind of, I'm sure, account for that, and at least get back on track. And we can help each other. Everyone's got to slay their own dragons. I can't slay your dragons for you. You can't slay mine, but we can help each other do it alongside each other. Someone came up with I heard this term called, learned optimism, and it's not so much that we can do everything, but it's like your bike breaks down. You've learned a few things on how to work on it. And then, it might be broken, and I don't know if I can fix it, but at least I know I can try, that's kind of all the difference.
Well, what is your vision for your organization and for mountain biking in the Gallup area and on the reservation in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's at least as amount of time that it's going to take to get close to anything. We're in this for the long game, and I think the vision is to essentially bring the industry to the reservation and make it an opportunity. It's something that every kid should have a decision about. And so the hope is to, the vision is to work with what's going to stick around. And in this region, that's schools and hospitals, and using vetted, proven models like NICA. We're working with an organization called Cycle Kids. We're speaking with an organization called Project Bike Tech, and working with, different foundations who have already supported bicycling in the past, believe in it as a good way moving forward, that much of what gets put into place is turnkey and has succession and isn't just resting on the shoulders of one or two persons' passion, which is kind of the legacy in the region that someone like myself comes, it's like, oh, we should start a bike team. And, they start a bike team, but then, their wife gets a new job somewhere else and they move away and everything falls through the floor. So, it's a hope to just bring access. And so I think that works in phases. I think the Navajo Nation is actually in a great spot to move forward within the outdoor rec industry. I mean, you look at things that happened with Moab, Utah, where uranium mining was what brought people there, and then the mining went away, and then what did they do? They started building trails and inviting people down, or making it hospitable. And same thing, we looked at the Sierra Buttes Trail Alliance, over in Downeyville, Downeyville's right. Communities in Northern Sierra, same thing, all these extractive mining companies, logging, timber, all went defunct. And then these communities are kind of like, well, what are we going to do? And, Sierra Buttes is like, wow, we're going to connect these communities with trail, and then have these trails ride right down into downtown, and help sustain and build business and industry. And so recently, the Navajo Generating Station is pulled out of the Navajo Nation. So the whole aspect of, I don't know, you might have heard of the Hopi Navajo land dispute, and that was basically, in the 70s, and a time where extractive mining came and basically displaced people so that they could have access to the coal mines, of which tapped the aquifer to slurry the coal from the Navajo Nation, 350 miles to Phoenix, sort of thing, or slurry it to the railroad to get it to LA, So what I'm trying to say is the extractive mining is pulling away from the res, and we spoke with the Navajo Nation director of the Division of Economics, who's like, hey, what's up with this? What's up with trails? What's up with bikes? What can we do? What can we make happen? And I think if anybody drives through the Navajo Nation, and many people do, to cut from Durango or Moab to Sedona on a road trip, they're looking up at these sandstone bluffs and these incredible landscape and being like, whoa, can we ride that? How do we make that happen? And there's some figures involved in all this. There's some people who could make things happen, but so much of it is caught up in sort of a bureaucratic red tape where, this sort of cut and paste government that Washington D.C. set up as, the Navajo tribal government, in order to put a trail on the reservation, you have to go through the same length as if you were putting in a water pipeline or something like that, And it's we're just trying to scratch out a 3-foot wide little, ribbon through the landscape here. We're not trying to, and because there's not a category for trail building over in Window Rock at the Capitol, so it's this project's not for the faint-hearted or, for people who aren't committed. And then you, but the potential's there. I keep saying, especially in Gallup, if you're a consumer, it sucks. If you're a creator, sky's the limit, and it's still the Wild West out here. It's just people are wearing blue jeans and ball caps now,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you've had the support of a number of foundations and specifically the Outride Foundation recently. Are there ways that individuals can support you as well?
There are. If you go to bicyclecoffee.org, we have a link that says support up on the bar, and that we are a 501c3 tax deductible organization. You can help. There's also an Everyday Hero campaign that's set up for the Diné Comp NICA team. So if you look up Diné, D-I-N-E, Comp, C-O-M-P, team on the Everyday Hero website, you'll see a link, and there's kind of more of a description of a little bit more of the detail of, like, you know, the challenges that are ahead in this project, but also, you know, the really incredible life-giving outcomes that it can and could provide for a lot of kids and families.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Scott, and also to Vincent for sharing your stories and for really bringing awareness, if nothing else, to sort of the challenges that are being faced in Gallup and on the reservation. And also thank you to both of you for all that you're doing to try to address some of those things.
Well, thank you, Jeff. You know, we've tried to get traction going on in, you know, our sleepy small towns, and kind of the censuses you get back is that nothing can be done until there's a critical mass, you know, until you get more people on board. And you know, thanks for your help in this and helping, you know, share the story, and hopefully we can, if anything, just get more people behind it. So thanks very much.
All right. Well, thanks again. And if you'd like to learn more, you can go to bicyclecoffee.org, where you can find out more about the mission and also contribute. That's all I've got this week. We'll talk to you again next week.